Welcome to Where Are They Now? I am your host, Heather Lindstedt. Thank you for joining me today, along with a very special guest that I've heard so much about. If you know anything about sports, this is one of the legends of Chelmsford High. Arnie Hotberg from the class of 1966. I've been in Chelmsford a long time, and your name always comes up when we talk about sports. Thank you for being here.
It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm thrilled to be here, in fact.
So your experience, though, with sports, I mean, obviously, when you started at Chelmsford, you got right into it. Was that but did everybody know about you prior to even high school? Were you playing youth sports and youth baseball? It's always been pretty big around here in Chelmsford.
Well, I had spent most of my growing up in western Massachusetts in a town called Westfield.
Yep.
And so we moved here at the end of my 8th grade year. So I don't think anyone knew who I was, and I didn't know who I was, quite frankly. I was trying to break into a new town, very intimidating, very anxiety-provoking. So, you know, sports was a way for me to be part of things and to be part of a wonderful, wonderful tradition that was growing.
Yeah.
Wonderful people.
When you moved here, though, were you the youngest or the oldest in your family, or?
I am the oldest of 3, yes.
Yeah, so you were leading the charge into Chelmsford High School.
Yes, I was.
So first couple of weeks, those kind of things, right? You're starting with football. I mean, how was that experience? And because Chelmsford has always been big into athletics, so you must have been a little scared of that. But how was the introduction as a freshman?
Well, it was very intimidating because I and Danny Gleason, one of my classmates, who was a great football, all scholastic, played at Wyoming, started in a bowl game at the University of Wyoming as a defensive tackle, and died tragically at a very young age. He's in the Hall of Fame. Danny, great guy, great player, just a great friend and teammate. He and I, as freshmen, were on the varsity team together. So that set us aside, I think, maybe from our classmate. Of course,
yep.
At least physically, we went one way, our classmates went another. And the other is a new boy in town. It was a little frightening to be on the varsity team when all my new peers were on the freshman team. So I had some adjusting to do.
Yeah. So where did the adjustments come from? Was it coaching, but just in the classroom with some of your teachers? How was that kind of adjustment? And who sticks out to kind of put their arm around you and get you going in the right direction?
Well, certainly in athletics, it was a huge adjustment from what passed for kids sports in those days, in the 50s and 60s, not like today. It was pretty casual. When we just grabbed the bats and balls and went out on the playground and played, unlike today where kids are in leagues from the time they're 4 years old, it seems. So that adjustment to going from just very casual middle school kind of sports to the real thing under Tom Eck, the general himself, it was intimidating, but it was inspiring because all of a sudden I learned what expectations were, and that not only did I have to understand what expectations were, but I had to meet those expectations. And with Tom Eck, it was meet the expectations or else. So it was great. My maturation curve was straight up.
Yeah. Straight up.
And some days I went home wondering if we shouldn't move to another town. But that, and academically, new town, new teachers, new. And Chelmsford was very different from the town, small city. I grew up in Western Mass, which was a factory town. You know, very few college-educated parents in the schools there at that time. And so coming here, it was like, my gosh, it's the big leagues in every way. And I had to step my game up. And it wasn't easy, but it was great.
But still inviting.
It wasn't easy, but it was great, and people could not have been more enjoyable to be with than the adults and the fellow students here.
Yeah.
Truly.
So talk about that, though. I mean, from your freshman year, though, you made your name, right? I mean, just the way that some of your stars, things that happened in football, baseball, like you became an all-star right away. Was that? Would you sum it up like that?
Well, Heather, as I always told my students as a teacher, a coach, and a school administrator, is that never believe your press clippings and never, ever, ever write them yourself. So I'm not going to even answer that question. It was, I had a place, though. I will say this. I had a place. I had teammates. And win and lose, we were together. That's what I remember very much about my Chelmsford High School experience, is that we won a lot more than we lost. But there were, there was the occasional bad baseball season. And we had some very disappointing losses. We never lost much, so any loss was really disappointing. But we were together, and we learned from them. And our coaches were great, as tough as they could be when the tough times came. They taught us how to get back on our horse and ride, as they say. And those lessons still are with me today.
So who was the toughest teacher in the classroom? Because obviously you had great academic success, the athletics helped you, but to get into Princeton, something had to be going in the right direction. So who was the Tom Eck in the classroom?
Well, along the way, I would say Leo King in 10th grade geometry. I loved geometry, and I loved Mr. King, and the day he sent me to the principal's office for being pompous and overbearing was a great lesson in life, because, I was being pompous and overbearing, and I deserved whatever I got. That was important. But I did really well in geometry because he wouldn't let me be a jerk, so to speak. I was there to learn and to be a gentleman, and he held my feet to the fire. And I didn't like going to the principal's office. That I didn't care for that. So I didn't want to repeat that too often or at all. And then I would say Dave McPhail, who was also my baseball coach, with a wonderful history of American, and he was more inspirational than demanding, I would say. I mean, he taught at the very high level, did his undergraduate work at Harvard. He was a very, very well-read man. He could tell stories and weave webs of things historically that were just mesmerizing. And I remember that saying, I want my game to be like his game academically. So he inspired me, and I trust others, to be more than we could be. And I write today, as I mentioned, write columns and write novels. And I've always enjoyed writing, but I would credit Martha Caneen, my senior year English teacher, with really, really getting the most out of me. She was out of the old school. She demanded a lot of us, not just in terms of academic performance, but in terms of independence and independence of thought. And so she pushed me and pushed me and pushed me to the point where my writing improved 1,000% in a year. And when I got to college, with a lot of other very accomplished students, I wasn't intimidated. It was hard work, and I didn't take a thing for granted, but Martha Caneen had prepared me. So when you've got that kind of preparation, and you know that you've met the standards of the very best, you've experienced the very best, the rest isn't history, but you can make it history.
So did you feel like the preparation both through sports and academics, like it's one thing to get into Princeton, right? You're there, but did you feel like you weren't intimidated? I mean, obviously it's Princeton, right? But did you feel like when you put your feet in the fire there that you were going to be okay?
Yeah, athletically it was, if one looks back at the successes we had in the 60s here, it was, we were tops. I mean, we were tops. We just won a lot, and we never took it for granted. Maybe that's the most important piece of that equation. So athletically, I knew I could hold. I really had confidence that I could hold my own, but had to compete. Had to do the hard work. Had to show up every day, do everything the coach had asked, and more maybe. Academically, well, shoot, it was a very, very accomplished crowd of students. But I knew what I knew how to do was to work. I knew I think I was confident enough that they wouldn't have admitted any of us if they didn't think we could do the work. But then it was the people who were going to work the hardest that were going to succeed. And I was taught to work by my parents and by my teachers and coaches here. So all I knew was, I tell people, my best friend my freshman year in college, probably the whole time I was in college, was Firestone Library. I went to the library every night for 3 or 4 hours, and studied.
Yeah.
But I knew how to do it.
Yeah.
Someone had taught me, and they taught me the value and that there were positive rewards in doing the hard work, that there was something gratifying and important. So thank you, Chelmsford High School. Thank you, Chelmsford teaching faculty, and thank you, coaching staff.
Well, in choosing kind of a major and what you went into, right? That was little bit of family values and the schooling. But then from Princeton, right? Or did you always know that you were going to be into the education and coaching and kind of giving back?
Giving back, yes. I went from Princeton to seminary. I was going to be a Lutheran parish minister. And what I found along the way through myriad experiences was that what I liked the best about my work in the church and through some other was working with kids. I loved working with kids. It was gratifying to me. It was my milieu. Whether it be teaching sixth grade Sunday school when I was a senior at Chelmsford High School, or coaching the football and baseball teams over at Lawrence Academy in Groton, Mass, and beyond. It was a way to really make a difference in young people's lives and to mix it up with them in what I consider, this may sound trite, but real ways. There was something real about being in competition and preparing for competition with a bunch of young people. And I've still have relationships with men I coached 40 plus years ago, which is gratifying and satisfying, both.
So when you went to the seminary though, and you just found your path into to the education, is that would?
Well, through the work in the church where I taught and did some coaching, coached teams, youth teams, and so on. I just felt it was the right thing for me.
Yeah.
And that I was making a difference doing it, and not only that, but I felt very happy doing it too, which I thought, well, maybe that's okay.
How would you describe your personality as a teacher administrator, because you were more of an administrator, versus when you were on the field? I hope very similar. What my feeling was that you always are honest, that you always, what you say, you do. You have expectations, you hold people to expectations, and you hold them to those expectations fairly, not overly gruffly, but you're firm and fair. That's sort of the two F's kind of go together, and good things happen from there. The stories I hear, not about me, but about teachers and coaches generally, is that and I think even today's modern kid would tell you this. Maybe the modern parent may not, but that adults who expect a lot, demand a lot, and give a lot all at once help them become better and help them grow up, right,
to be more successful.
So I know you're not going to tell me about your accomplishments, but were there failures in your sports, either at the high school level or at Princeton, like failures or some bad game that helps you, though, relate to some of the kids and within your teachings?
I thought this was only a 30-minute or so interview. Do we have 6 or 7 days?
We might.
I can talk about failures. Yeah.
Your fan club would want you on here for 6 or 7 days.
Yeah, a couple quick anecdotes. When I was a senior in college, and we were playing Yale at home, both of us were vying for the Ivy League championship. We were both right there. We and Dartmouth, it was 3 very equal teams. And Yale was ahead of us 17-14, waning moments of the game. We may or may not have stalled out. That's still a debatable issue to this day among my teammates, because the offense wanted to stay on the field and score a touchdown. The coach decided to send the place kicker onto the field and attempt a field goal, and I happened to be the place kicker, and I missed the field goal in the last minutes. And I have a Doonesbury cartoon, Gary Trudeau, who was then writing Bull Tales for the Yale Daily News. That's the precursor to the famous cartoon. That cartoon is in a book, and it's about the failed place kicker from Princeton named I lost, and my poor teammates and me, and I sobbed, I wept, I didn't want to see anybody.
Yeah.
And you know, and that taught me a lot about life, because my teammates got over it, and they helped me get over it, and we went on, and we still see each other to this day. So yeah, that was very, very important. And then when I played professional baseball, you know, that professional baseball in the low minor leagues is if someone tells you it's fun, question them hard, because it is a very difficult life. Low pay, very difficult conditions. You never know where you are. You're in and out of buses, motels. You get, I don't know what they get today. We got $4 a day on the road to eat. Even in 1970, they could barely get you a Whopper and fries and a Coca-Cola, for gosh sakes, you know. So very hard. And that was just a challenging experience. And I had to confront myself and realize that, you know, maybe this is something I shouldn't pursue.
Yeah.
That I needed to do something different. Maybe I had been an excellent amateur baseball player, but you've met the end of the road. Find something that you can really pursue with all your passion, intelligence, and get on with your life. Get on with your life, sort of. You know, come on. Yeah.
Was it hard though to give up sports? Like, you know, you had the athletic talent to do it. Was it hard to make that final decision?
I guess it was and it wasn't, because I knew I had other things I really cared about, the church, you know, teaching, coaching, those things. And so I had alternatives that some of the men in the clubhouse with me did not have.
Right.
And I, you know, maybe in an immature way, understood that when I was 22. But I remember when the skipper, the manager, called me into his office at the end of the season and said, Arnie, he probably called me Dog. Hey, Dog. He was an old guy from South Georgia, you know. We couldn't understand each other. We spoke different languages. And Manager North said, Arnie, the people in the Bronx want to know if you're coming back next year. You're coming to spring training. I said, Skipper, I don't think so. He said, Arnie, one season doesn't make a career. And I just said, Skipper, sometimes it does. And I think it was the right decision. You know, I could have hung around and played in the minor leagues. Who knows? Maybe gotten a cup of coffee. Maybe I've been Bull Durham. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you know what? I was spurred to take what was a very difficult and I was not successful, but that experience, and turn it into motivation to get on with my life and do something I cared about, I guess.
Well, right, but to experience working with kids is probably one of the best things, because it sounds to me that you know more about what your students that you coach and are doing now, and would rather talk about them than your history as an athlete.
Because there's so much satisfaction in knowing that one has helped someone else grow up.
Yeah.
And I've always been, I love to tell stories, for good or for ill, and I don't mind talking about failures, because, as I've always said, there are no undefeated lives. That's a phrase I came up with way, way back when. There are no undefeated lives. You know, the Texas Rangers won the World Championship last year. They didn't win 70% of the games they played during the regular season. There are no undefeated lives, yet they were successful.
Yep.
That's a real metaphor for life itself, I think. And I've tried to impart that to kids. Just because you fall down, you know, you failed only if you fail to get up.
Right.
If you want to go grouse about it, then you're failing.
Yeah. Now, you've done a lot of things. You've lived in 8 states, you've lived in a couple of countries.
Yeah.
Where did the travel come from? Is that just pursuing different opportunities, or your own value of getting away and trying different things?
I think probably 2 places. One, just good fortune.
Yep.
Well, 3 places. Good fortune, a willingness to be open to new experiences, and the other is books. From the time I was a child, I loved reading, and here at Chelmsford High School, I could have done better in class if I had spent less time reading the literature I read on the side, because I love to read. And so I was transported to different places, to different times, met different people from all over the world just by reading. And I've applied that to my personal life. And I mean that sincerely. I mean, and you know, I don't know whether my English and history teachers in high school would be shocked and awed by that, and maybe not, because I just loved the new experiences, and so I've applied that, and I do gain lots of joy from meeting new people and finding out where people are from and what they do. And
so, speaking of, you've published books.
I have.
So you want to talk to?
Well, the first novel I wrote came out a little over a year ago. It's called Game On. Shocking that it's sports-oriented, I know, Heather. But Game On, and in fact, on the cover is a picture of a young man's hand reaching up with a catcher's mitt on it. And I was a catcher for 14 years. And it's about sports, but it's also about life's lessons. Winning, losing, succeeding, failing, trying, not trying, and relationships, the things, the values that I hold very dear. So it's aimed at middle school age kids, 10 to 14-year-olds primarily. So it's fun. And the second one is coming out shortly, and it is called The Pathfinder. And, you know, James Fenimore Cooper, I'm a great fan of this leather stocking tale, so The Pathfinder, and it's second down in life to go. And it's got a lot of sports in it too, and it's again aimed at middle school kids. And it's about winning and losing and succeeding. And I better disclaim this. People who read it from these parts better know that a lot of it's fiction, but you may recognize some people. The names may have changed, but you may recognize some people, and you may recognize some events, because I've used, you know, Mark Twain's advice: write what you know about, to write the novel.
Yeah.
And so it's been fun. Telling the tales has just been a great. I don't know whether anyone else likes it, but I like it. So.
Well, did any of your classmates for Game On have any, classmates or teammates have any comments on it?
Well, yes, people have, and probably the primary reason I'm here is that Traz Scoggins, class of '66 CHS, great, luminous sports writer for the Lowell Sun forever. I mean, she's covered the Sox brilliantly for them, and what a writer he is. He's my Roger Angel as baseball writers, and kept score for the Spinners, whose hat I have in my car outside. He wrote, I think he might have called Mr. Paraso, and he wrote a piece. He's our class scribe for the Lion's Pride, and here so Charlie let the cat out of the bag, or Chaz, I guess we call him forever now.
Chaz,
sorry,
because of Carlton Fisk, who
yeah.
named him that. So yes.
So Chaz let the cat out of the bag, and there we are. But I read his Foul Ball too.
Yeah. Okay.
Have you read that?
No.
It's a humorous baseball story, and he can tell baseball stories. That guy.
Oh yeah, he can tell baseball.
He knows them.
He knows them. So, with this whole journey, where do you think that it all came from? Do you think it was just partially academics, or, and I talk about this all the time about young people now, and people don't always want to believe that athletics can really define some of the values that you have. But I think from what you and I are talking about, some of the things are just really about the after-school kind of events.
Yeah, I mean, I would say certainly the academic side of life has always been very important to me. But in terms of molding character, being in the cauldron of it all, sports. Because you're putting it on the line and in public. People who haven't known me for a long time will talk about what it's like to be in the public and what it's like. And I said, I hate to tell you, for good or for ill, from the time I was 14, really, I was performing in front of crowds. And again, 35, 40,000 people at Palmer Stadium, Princeton University, saw me muff a field goal horribly. Yeah. And then G.B. Trudeau happened to immortalize me forever with it to boot. Now, I learned a lot by that. Not that I was more important than anyone else, but that, you can survive anything, and that when you're in front of a lot of other people, you're accountable. And you're accountable not only to the crowd up there, but your coaches and your teammates, most importantly. It taught me what I learned about being a team member, being a good team member. I think that carries me through still carries me through every single day of my life. That I know how to be a team member. Thank you. And that's not because of me. That's because other people taught me how to be a good teammate, including my teammates.
So what makes a good leader, though?
A good leader is someone who, again, is honest, who has integrity, who does what she or he says she or he's going to do, never blames someone else, always accepts responsibility, and prepares for tomorrow better than he prepared for today.
Now, you mentioned your parents and the work ethic. Was mom or dad the true athlete that gave you the athleticism, or were they just the encouraging voices?
They were encouraging voices. They were the World War II generation, so their adulthoods didn't start off. Maybe as an unfulfilled dream. My dad didn't finish high school in Queens, New York. He did get a diploma, but he went into the United States Navy, and they gave him a diploma because he did enough. And that's what happened to a lot of men at that time. My mom went to work in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. That's what they did. They couldn't go to college. They had to slug it out, praise be, to save the world. To be part of the team that saved the world, dealing with the greatest adversity known to humankind. So, but they were very encouraging. I think my dad was probably an athletic young man, but growing up in New York City and having to go to war, he didn't have much opportunity. But they just encouraged me to do what I love to do, but always to give things my best effort and never be diminished by failure, lack of success.
Yeah. Well, I think it's an incredible story, and I know that everybody around here in Chelmsford in that area of the 60s and even the 70s are still very much about talking about how athletic you were. But I think that you were right? It's a Chelmsford thing. You were with great people, great coaches, and that was, you inspired some and they inspired you in the same thing. So I want to tell you, you are a great alumni for Chelmsford High, and everything that you've done and given back is incredible. So I truly appreciate it. But we have to end today, and I would love to have you back if you're ever back in the area, or we can Zoom.
Well, I'd love to, and I'd love to bring my wife Jan, who's also a class of 1966, with me. But all I have to say in closing is, thank you very much for this opportunity, Heather. I appreciate it. And go Lions!
There we go. With that, thank you all for being part of Where Are They Now? My guest, Arnie Hotberg, I hope you'll read his books and be inspired from this little interview. So thank you to everybody.